Welcome to the Literature Lounge, where writers and authors share their stories behind their stories.
I think I was pretty late on the critical thinking journey. So once I started doing that, a lot of the worldviews I had started falling apart. And it almost felt like someone just pulled the rug from under my feet.
So, Eliama inherits not just a house, but also a history of violence and silence. So, how did you shape her character as she navigates, both trauma and creativity?
So Alien is a character I created so that I could connect with the story myself. But again, as it is with the other characters, even with Eliama, I don't know how you sketch characters. I did not give very detailed sketch. I just threw her into the situation. I discovered the character myself. Most of the characters in the book, especially the women, are rebellious. They're not even quietly rebellious. They are obnoxiously rebellious. So it is a reflection of women and their true selves at the end of the day. That's what I have tried to achieve in the book. So I had to mention caste in the book. I could not escape it because it is such an integral part of the system, of the community, of the fabric of society. I honestly don't think it is the British who created class. We have always lived with it. Ask any serious historian and they'll say that. But I think there are narratives that say, no, that's not true. But, we have the history with us.
Aliyamma walks into her grandfather's old bungalow in Puthlur and steps straight into a century of silence, secrets, and rebellion. In The Remnants of Rebellion, author Ponnu Elizabeth Mathew unearths what happens when the ghosts of the past meets the fractures of the present. From the Naxalite uprisings of the 1960s to the quiet rebellion within a Syrian Christian home, this episode dives into memory, faith, and the weight of inheritance. And it does ask, what does rebellion really mean when history lives inside you? So let's now just dive straight into this. Welcome, Punu, in today's episode.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
So, Punu, let's talk about the start. You've been a journalist, artist, and a newscaster, and now a novelist. That's so many roles. And when did you just really first realize that this story from your grandfather's life needed to become your debut novel?
All right. I did not set out to write a debut novel in the first place. So I was a journalist, and but this story has been in the family for a long time. So I'll give you a little bit of the background. So this story is inspired by a real life incident from my maternal grandfather's life when he was the superintendent of a rubber estate in Kerala in the late 1960s. And this was the time when the Naxal movement was at its height in Kerala. And there were strikes, garaos, lockouts, and it went on and on, all these things. And labor union activities were very robust as well. So during one of the strikes, the assistant superintendent was stabbed to death. And that forms the backbone of the story. So I have obviously fictionalized it and I've given it a present day timeline as well. So one follows the life of Isho, who's the superintendent of a rubber estate, and the other follows the life of Eliama, who is his granddaughter. So I was a journalist, and it's my brother. He's an academician. And he told me, that I should write this book because these are the stories we grew up with. Stories about the grandkids. We grew up hearing stories about the estate, about the rivers and the elephant baths. And my grandfather had a dog called Duke. There is a dog in the book as well called Duke. And so we grew up hearing these stories, and of course, about this incident. And as grandkids, we used to think, what if that had been my grandfather? Probably none of us would even be here. It's got this butterfly effect, and life can just completely change with one incident. So I quit my job. I was in my 20s. It was a while ago. I quit my job to write this book. And I started writing. I wrote about 4,000 words, and then I got stuck. In hindsight, I think probably because it was not the right time and I was perhaps not mature enough to embrace the big world that this book has finally embraced. So I did not write this book for 10 years. I did so many other things. I had two children, And when my younger daughter turned one, just after she turned one, I said, I'm going to do it again. So I revisited the book, and it took me about 5 years of non-stop writing and editing. So a little over 5 years, including the publisher's edits as well, to complete the book. So that is the journey the book has taken.
Wow, that's a really long journey. That's amazing. So you know what, Ponu, in journalism, you're often like, dealing with facts, deadlines, and very clear narrative. So when you moved into fiction, especially dealing with such layered history, what was the biggest shift in your mindset that you had to really make and work upon yourself very consciously? And I think your answer will help a whole lot of journalists who do want to write, but then again, sometimes they really don't know how to do that entire shift. So tell us a little bit more on that.
So even while writing the book, I had to deal with facts, I had to deal with deadlines, I had to deal with narratives, but on a slightly different level.
Clearly, you left your book in between.
Yes, yeah. So, but anyway, I had to deal with all these things as well. So, the narrative. I had to deal with a different kind of narrative. There's a whole narrative arc that I had to explore, and then of course I had to make my own deadlines. And then once I met the publisher, they gave deadlines, but that was a little more relaxed than my own deadlines. And facts. I, in fact, had a whole world of facts to deal with. In fact, I did so much reading and so much research. I read so many books around the timelines, the time that I was, timelines I was dealing with. The history of the church, the history of the Naxal movement, the rise of all those things. So I read a lot, but in fact, for uh, like a little thing. And, I read so much, and probably one or two sentences made its way eventually into the book. So I had to, okay, so those were the facts. So I'll give you one incident, one example. So I got the whole radio transcript um, of Radio Peking. So Radio Peking used to transmit, and there were people in Kerala who used to listen to it. And eventually, a lot of them got into the Naxal movement as well, because there were messages from Chairman Mao from China. So one of those really crucial radio transcripts, radio messages was the peal of spring thunder has crashed over the land of India. So I discovered the whole transcript, and I was so excited. I'm like, yes, new fact. And I wrote the whole transcript, and it took about a chapter. And finally, my editor said, no, that's not happening. Get rid of that. So for me, I think the challenge, it was a very exciting challenge, was to find the balance between fact and fiction. And I think that was a journey that I had to discover. And I think that's a challenge. But a lot of journalists do end up writing books. So
Of course,
yeah, yeah.
it's
So
a
it's exciting to see
natural
that.
progression, Ponnu, because we all have stories, and then, you probably sit down one day and you put
Yeah,
that all out together. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But even while I was a journalist, I think I thought like a novelist. I don't know how to explain that, but
Yeah, no,
this
no, I
is
get it.
something.
I've been a
Yeah,
journalist myself, so I know
right?
what it's
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
Yeah. Solace in the words, right, Ponnu?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, solace in the words. So let's talk a little bit about the history, politics, and the rebellion. I love the rebellion. You've said
Mm,
that writing helps you make sense of the world around and within you, which I completely agree with you. How
mm.
did that influence, the emotional tone of Remnants of Rebellion?
So so after the book was published, it was published a few months ago actually, and some of the reviewers, the critics, said that the prose is atmospheric. I love that word, atmospheric, and I just wondered, oh wow, is it atmospheric? I hadn't set out to write an atmospheric book. That was not the intention. It just happened to be like that. Probably because of what I was going through as well. So it took me about 5 years of active writing to complete the book. And during those 5 years, I've had some changes in perspective as well about the world. I think I was pretty late on the critical thinking journey. So once I started doing that, a lot of the worldviews I had started falling apart. And it almost felt like someone just pulled the rug from under my feet. And it was a difficult few years. I'm not going to get into the details, but yeah, it changed my perspective, my faith, my ideas, my outlook about life, and all those things. It was tough. But the one thing that kept me going was writing, and of course, my children and writing. That's how I at least tried to make sense of the world around me and the world within me, the world of pain, the world of anguish, but at the same time, also the world of beauty. And so that's how I try to make sense of it. I haven't completely made sense of it. I don't think I ever will, but it's just an attempt to do that.
It's a
Yeah,
journey, Punu. It's always
yeah,
a journey, you know. It can never ever, I think, and this journey continues forever, you know, especially for people who seek, um, clarity about life and seek, answers to questions that are often not, you don't find the answers very easily. So I completely, again, just like you, writing is that one way in which I make sense of my completely dysfunctional life around me, So, Ponu, let's talk a little bit about the book. The Remnants of Rebellion actually explores both political and personal narratives. From the Naxalite uprisings to private acts of defiance. So and they're all intermingled. We know that. So, what connects these different forms of rebellion for you as a person?
yeah. So the connection, as you said, it's all intermingled. It's a lot. But the connection would be in the fact that the lines between the personal and the political become blurred. Well, in life as well as in this narrative as well. So again, it's not something I set out to do. It's something that I discovered while I was writing. So the book talks about rebellions of all kinds, political, social, cultural. I've mentioned things like the Vaikam Satyagraha that led to the Temple Entry Proclamation Act and the wagon tragedy. I've given snippets of the independence struggle and also, of course, the Naxalbari movement, and also social reform movements like PRDS, which is a very unique social, it's like a social religious movement in Kerala called PRDS, Pratyaksha Raksha Deva Sabha. So uh, are they just political? No, they're not, because there are people involved in it and it's personal for them. So, what I've done is that I've inserted characters in these different situations in the Satyagraha, in the wagon tragedy, in even in an incident of moral policing. So, Eliama is involved in one of the incidents, and people are playing politics around her, but it's not politics, it's her life, so it's personal. So it's it seeps in. There is no clear boundary there. So that is one of the things that I have explored in the book. Those lines merge, they blend, and they take on a unique form.
So Elema inherits not just a house, but also a history of violence and silence, both that are so deadly when you think about it. So how did you shape her character as she navigates, both trauma and creativity? Well, I always feel that trauma and creativity sometimes become best friends, Um so I would really like to know from you, Punnu.
Yeah, so initially, I did not have Eliama in the story. So this was when I was writing in my 20s, and then I took a break for 10 years writing the story. So initially, it was just the character of Isho that I had. And probably that's one of the reasons I got stuck. I was just fixated on just one story. So when I picked up the novel again, I knew that I had to bring in Eliama. I did that because I felt that I couldn't completely do justice to the 1960s or the earlier timelines because I'd not seen it, I'd not lived it. So I wanted to have a connection to the story myself. That's why I brought in Eliama. But honestly, at the end of the day, I felt I had more freedom writing the 1960s timeline. That's another story. But so Aliam is a character I created so that I could connect with the story myself. But again, as it is with the other characters, even with Eliama, I did not give, I don't know how you sketch characters, I did not give a very detailed sketch. I just threw her into the situation and I discovered the character myself. I threw her in situations, threw the others in situations, and I wanted to see how they would react. And I don't think I just wrote her. She showed me who she was. Does that make sense?
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it does. And it's amazing
So,
that you discover her along with your own growth, right? When you're writing the book.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
I discovered her. I
Yeah.
discovered the trauma that she had. She's from a dysfunctional family. I discovered the creativity that she held and brought all those things together.
Amazing. Let's talk a little bit about the women in your book, which they seem to be bound by tradition and but they are very quietly rebellious. So was that a very deliberate reflection, on the social realities of the Syrian Christian women, of the mid 20th century Kerala? Because I don't think there's a lot that's been written there. I would really like to, pick on your brains, Ponnu, about this.
Yeah, so the women, so most of the characters in the book, especially the women, are rebellious. They're not even quietly rebellious. They are obnoxiously rebellious.
I love that.
Character of, yeah, they are, and they don't care. So they are so unapologetic about it. Especially even Eliama, she comes with a dreadlock uh, hair and her tattoos, and she runs barefoot. She's rebellious in her own way, because of different reasons. You'll see why when you read the book. And the other character is Eliama's mother, Amma, who is very rebellious for her time. She's from the 60s, 70s, but she's openly rebellious. Um, is it a reflection of the women of the time, or the Syrian Christian women? No, it's just a reflection of women, how we are, how we all have that within us. And given the opportunity and the option, we can rise and be whoever we want to be. So it is a reflection of women and their true selves at the end of the day. That's what I have tried to achieve in the book.
Amazing. Punu, you've done it really well. So you've set the novel in a Syrian Christian household, like drawing from your own background. So what are the common misconceptions about the community that you want to, address or really clarify? I would love to know.
Yeah, okay. So there are many misconceptions, even within the community.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, yeah, I'll tell you. So a lot of people think Syrian Christian Malayalis are from Syria. Not true. All right. So even within the community, some people say, oh, we took a boat and came from Syria. That's not how it worked. That's not how transportation worked. So the whole term Syrian is because of the word Syriac, which is a language, which is a dialect of Aramaic, which is a language spoken in the Levant, which was spoken in the Levant. And why Syriac? Because Syriac is a language that is used in the church liturgies, which are the prayers and the practices, and the singing and hymns. This is the language, Syriac is the language that the churches use. So that is why there is the name Syrian Christian Malayalis. They're not from Syria. But yes, there are some denominations like the Knanayas within the Syrian Christian community that say they are descendants, they're descended from Syria as well. So we don't know exactly, but not the whole community. That's the other misconception. People think Syrian Christian community is all uniform. No, it's not. There are many denominations within it. Many, many actually. In fact, there are Catholics, there are Chaldeans, there are the Orthodox, there's Jacobites, there's Marthomites. Some of them are Reformed. Some of them follow the West Syriac liturgy. Some of them follow the East Syriac. So one is from Antioch, one is from Persia. So there are many, many differences, and there are different churches. It's not like there is one Syrian Christian church. There are many, many churches. So that is the other misconception. And I think a third misconception, slightly controversial one. I've gotten into trouble for addressing this before, but I have to say this. So the misconception is that okay, so this is a narrative. I have to stress the word narrative and legend and story here because the story is that Syrian Christians are descendants of Brahmins. A story again. So these are claims, these are narratives that people make to, uh, to maybe certain other people, and also to propagate their own ideas of religiosity. So that is the other misconception. Uh, Another one, a fun one. So before the British came with their Western Victorian morality, a lot of people, a lot of women in Kerala didn't wear tops. They would have their loincloths, they would have a little cloth, and but a lot of people think that all Syrian Christian women had blouses. But no, not true. A lot of Syrian Christian women were topless. In fact, my one of my great grandmothers, she didn't wear a blouse. She had a little flimsy garment around her, and she was that was the traditional thing to do. So wearing a blouse was a modern thing. It's very ironic because now we say, "Oh, covering up is so traditional." I mean, was it? I don't know.
Yes, even in Bengal.
Yeah,
Even in Bengal, they wore their saris without a blouse, in rural parts. And the blouse was really a very, very colonial,
yeah,
influence that
yeah,
started,
yeah.
with the rich who began wearing blouses, and then they had tailors to really create those kind of fancy blouses for them. But traditionally, there was no concept of a blouse.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So yeah, some of the misconceptions.
Yeah, and then now we have bras with underwires, and we have bras without underwire and sports bras. So
Yeah,
evolution just doesn't stop for women and their bodies. So
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is this society dictates what the
totally on
women
how to
should
control
wear.
how we look and what we wear.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you think colonial and missionary influences have shaped class and caste, hierarchies within Kerala's Christian communities? Because we know that there's a lot of disparity there, right? So, and how
Hmm.
does your novel really engage with this sort of tension?
Okay, so it is. I honestly don't think it is the British who created class or caste. We have always lived with it. Ask any serious historian, and they'll say that. But I think there are narratives that say no, no, that's not true. But we have the history with us. So I had to mention caste in the book. I could not escape it because it is such an integral part of the system, of the community, of the fabric of society. So technically, Syrian Christian Malayalis don't have a caste. They fall outside it. And so what happened is the Portuguese came in 1498 and they converted a lot of people. And the Syrian Christians looked down upon the newly converted people. And there was caste dynamics within the community. They didn't welcome the new Christians into their churches. And all these stories are there in many layers in the book. I could not escape it because it was such an integral part of the system, and some people took pride in it. And I have explored how some of the characters have dealt with these things. And yeah, so when you read it, you'll see how these little things, but they're not little, these big things play out in little ways in the society.
So, let's talk about the structure and the style. The story unfolds across three generations. So how did you decide how much of the past to reveal through memory, rumor, or really the historical record, which it's extremely complex, right? Because, we're not talking just one time span, we're talking across generations. So how did you really look into it? Was there any particular literary work or tradition or Malayalam fiction, post-colonial writing or historical sagas that inspired your, narrative style for the book?
Mm. So I think all these elements are there in the book equally. There's the lived experience. There are rumors. I've eavesdropped on different conversations. And and of course, there are historical facts as well and narratives. And the book stands at the intersection of history and fiction. And so, yes, there were a few books that really informed me and helped me understand uh, the class and caste hierarchies of the time, and also the movement, the Naxalbari movement. So, one of the books that really helped me understand and give me an insider's perspective about the Naxalbari movement was this book by Ajita called Kerala's Naxalbari. So, it was written in Malayalam, it's translated into English as well. So, Ajita was the lone woman who was part of the attack of a police station in Pulpally. In fact, she's also there in the book. I've not mentioned her by name, but people who know the story will know who I'm talking about. Her memoir really gave me an insider's perspective about the movement. And the other book that really helped me understand caste hierarchies around the time was Modernity of Slavery. It's a book by P. Sanal Mohan. He's a historian, he's a professor of history. So I learned a lot of new things. I learned about this community called PRDS, which I've mentioned in my book as well through his work. So, and yes, I read a lot of papers, and all these things have definitely informed my worldview to a certain extent. Yeah,
So, the plantation system may have faded, which I'm not too sure. I don't know. Maybe you'd be able to tell us.
yeah.
But, similar power structures, I know that they still exist today, right? So, what parallel do you see between, your novel's world, the world that your protagonist and your characters inhabit, and to present day India? Is there any similarity?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, we still have plantations now.
Yes,
The
of course.
system has slightly changed, at least in Kerala, it's changed. But the situation has not really changed in many ways in many parts of the country. Fortunately, things have changed for the better in Kerala. Thanks to literacy, thanks to social reform movements, the state has come a long way. But it's not the same in other places. We open the newspaper and I don't have to explain it. We can read it and we'll see what is happening in the world, in our country. And we still have different systems of power, might not look the same, but is very similar. We still have the corporate and industrial power. We still have social injustice. We still even have bonded laborers. Yeah. So things have changed, but not really changed. So it's still so pertinent today. So, yeah, that's why it's important to talk about it.
So, finally, what do you think is the rebellion that every writer must wage, against society or against themselves? What is that rebellion?
I don't think I can speak for all writers, but I can speak for myself and speak about the overarching role of literature in society. So, I think for me, in many ways, a rebellion is not external. It's very much internal. It's a rebellion against myself in many ways. It is a rebellion against my own demons, my own complacency, my delusions, and my falsehoods. And I might not even be aware of that. It is when I write that these things come to the surface. So it constantly challenges my weaknesses and my delusions. And I think it starts there. So I think it was Tolstoy who said that, art should not be beautiful. It should not be written or it should not be made to pamper one's ego. It should be ugly, I guess, because
I
it is
agree.
about the world. And so Tolstoy viewed this inner change as more fundamental and lasting than external political revolution, because social and political systems are ultimately composed of individuals who need to be morally awakened. So that is what I do with writing. It is a battle against myself.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ponnu, for being on today's episode. And for all our listeners here, every story leaves behind an echo. But in this one, it reminds us that even silence, there is rebellion. So thank you for listening, and to Ponnu Elizabeth Mathew for helping us see the world a little differently with her work and her book. Thank you, Ponnu, for being on today's episode.
An absolute pleasure to be here, Mahua. Thank you so much.